Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 129 of High Spirits. I'm Ben Larson,
And I'm Anna Ray Grabstein.
and we're recording Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. And we have another cannabis business news roundup for you today. We're going to talk about Tilray's acquisition of Brewdog for $44 million and dive into all things AI, International Women's Day, and whatever else comes to mind. So, before we get there, Anna Ray, how's your weekend? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so good. We were texting all about the things we were doing with our sons on
We
Saturday.
were.
Yeah, it was so cool. I went to this really awesome science fair with my son, and that was great, really inspiring. And then on Sunday, I went to what I would call a living funeral for someone who's at the end of their life to
Oh,
celebrate their life, and got to experience some incredible lessons and share memories. It was a really, really beautiful ritual. So I felt really filled up by that. And
that
yeah.
sounds very emotional. Like I'm just trying to imagine. I've never been to one. I would. Can you explain it just a little bit? Because like having the person there that is celebrating their own life and eventual passing, which I presume is is it like on the near horizon? Like, do they
Hard
like
to know
what?
exactly. So I won't like blow up this person's life, but
Sure.
and I can't say that I know anything about really what a living funeral is except the experience that I had. And this is just a person who's been fighting an incurable cancer for 3 years and
Mm,
is at the sort of end of the rope of treatment options and decided to invite important people in their life to spend time in their backyard to share some pointed words and to receive words from the community. And there was a bit of a ritual with a beautiful flower lei and some sage. And it was just really incredible to get to to celebrate a person's life with them still there. I've been
mm-hmm.
to a number of funerals where I've learned things about people that I never knew in their life. And it always was a missed opportunity. Like, wow, I wish that I knew that thing about that person. And I'm getting to learn from these people that were important to them later. And this was a way to get to learn and hear some of those memories and special remembrances in the presence of this person at the end of their life. And one of the most powerful things that he said is just to keep our hearts open and be present, and also uh, that he's got to this place of peace where there are no unfulfilled wishes. And that has really got my head spinning about what that can look like, to get to a place in life where we have no more unfulfilled wishes. And I think that that doesn't come from a place that he got everything in life that he wanted. I think it comes from a place of reflection and letting go. And it's a powerful thing.
Yeah. Um, Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. I was listening to this motivational podcast this morning actually that was talking about like don't die with your song, like inside you still. Um
Mm.
yeah. Wow, what a special experience. Um
Yeah, so cool.
yeah, it
And
kind of
you were making my 7th grade self this weekend separately, your texts. You were sending me texts of skateboarding with your son, Alistair, and
Yeah.
my head immediately went to, "Oh my gosh, when I was in 7th grade, I loved all the skater boys." I just couldn't get enough of them. You kinda made my heart sing a little bit. My
Oh,
7th grade
well,
self was happy.
yeah, in line with what you're saying, I've been hearing a lot lately about um kind of finding your inner child and continuing to give it space. And who better to inspire that than my own son, who definitely reflects a lot of my characteristics. But he's gotten into skateboarding recently, and I used to be into skateboarding, back in junior high and high school. And so, with a healthy fear of me breaking myself, which inevitably will happen if I keep this up, I'm just kind of giving into it and I'm enjoying the moment. And it's something that we are really enjoying together and just getting lost in. And so we had like a 3-hour skate session at a skate park. Um, and just laughing and enjoying the outdoors. And yeah, really grateful for the opportunity to do that. And I actually we went to a skate shop, and I got to pick out a new deck and trucks and all the wheels and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it brought me back to my 12-year-old self. And so similar to your takeaway from the weekend is kind of what my takeaway was as well with my son.
That's beautiful. It's so cool. And
Yeah,
he's a super cool kid. So I'm excited to see where this all goes. And
he's all right.
yeah, I know he's listening. What's up, Alistair? Well, it's March, which is Women's Month, Women's History Month, I
Hmm.
think. And over the weekend, it was International Women's Day. And it made me think about this sticker that was on my friend's car for years that said, "Love your mother." And I started thinking about really what that means, love your mother, and the cannabis plant that I think of as
Hmm.
the mother plant. Cannabis cultivators have whole rooms that they call their mother spaces,
Hmm.
and just this importance that women hold in this space, and how much progress women have created in cannabis. And at the same time, I will admit that I've really struggled to be in women-centric spaces, in cannabis specifically, and haven't always felt super comfortable. And part of that is because as I've grown in my cannabis career, I have spent most of my time in rooms with mostly men,
Mm.
and you get used to that.
Yeah.
And this weekend, and seeing people celebrate women online was just this moment where I was remembering about all the women that have really supported me, and how many more women are in my professional world today than there used to be, which I
Sure.
feel really stoked about. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, it felt a little bit quieter online than it normally has in the past. And I don't know if that's because it is now dispersed through the whole month versus like concentrated on a day. Um, and, I felt a little bad because I was on LinkedIn, and I got fed up, an old post like the algorithm tends to do these days. And I'm like, oh, shit, I missed it. But I guess I didn't miss it. It's the whole month. So
You
there's
didn't
still
miss
time
it.
for me.
Yes, it is.
um, but yeah, I spent a lot of my life being, an ally to women. I grew up around women and always saw women in like leadership positions. And um, I guess as I've come to develop my own like leadership style and how I support my team, um, that was always kind of felt really natural to me. But I want to give like kind of one anecdote that actually pulled away from like our management recently, is that one of our employees, one of our star employees, I will say, I won't name her, so she gets some anonymity. Anonymity. Um, Anyways, she was on maternity leave not too long ago. She recently came back, and this was her second round, with us. And what we found out her superpower was systematizing her job function and setting us up for success so that we hardly recognized that she wasn't there. And she's done such a phenomenal job at this day and age with AI and creating structure and systems and directions. Like, she's now like elevating into this role of helping build out systems that can get automated. And I just loved this evolution where like she is uniquely positioned because of the female experience to play a really critical role as we modernize our company. So yeah, just
That's so
thought I'd throw
cool.
it out
That
there
is
because I know a lot of CEOs are like, oh God, maternity leave, what are we gonna do? But like, it was actually a really special realization, and excited for this next phase of her career.
that's awesome. I love the idea of family leave as the process unlock
Yeah.
to move towards more like process automation. It's so smart, and what a cool superpower. So
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah.
Uh, I shared a picture when I was in Vegas at MJ Biz. A fellow woman CEO, Melanie Nash, invited me to go on a hike and to leave the strip. And she posted a picture of us. It was an incredible hike. It was a full moon over the desert outside of Vegas. And we just
Wow.
had such a good time. And we talked about our lives, and we got business done. And in posting that picture, it made me also just think about how many golf courses I haven't felt welcome at, because I'm just not good at golf. That's the truth. I've asked you before. I've told you I was like, Ben, I'll play golf with you, but you got to get me lessons. I think you offered
we'll,
once.
we will fix that.
Yes. However, seeing that picture made me think a little bit just about how there's lots of places that aren't golf courses that we can create spaces for ourselves. And this
Mhm.
idea that golf represents of like the good old boys club about doing fun stuff leading to business or going into places where we feel like our highest and best selves, creating opportunities for creative inspiration as a part of work. I love that idea. And
Totally.
and so to all the ladies that might be listening that have never felt welcome on the golf course, find your spot too.
Yeah.
Like get out there under the full moon, howl at it, do whatever makes all the sense for us. But those like work and play things that the boys have been doing for a long time are things that we should get to do also.
Moonwalks. Let's go.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, okay, last on my women rant, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
How about that?
All
Is
good. Yeah.
in 2019, I was at NorCal Cannabis and we were scaling and growing the company a bunch. And we were talking about doing this collaboration with Chelsea Handler at the time. And we put on an event called A Tribute to Women in Cannabis. And as part of that, we printed this incredible poem that we put at everybody's seat at the table. And it's called Autobiography of Eve. And I thought I would just read it in honor of Women's Month for all the ladies out there because I just love it. And I'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. So, Autobiography of Eve by Ansel Elkins. Wearing nothing but snakeskin boots, I blazed a footpath, the first radical road out of that old kingdom toward a new unknown. When I came to those great flaming gates of burning gold, I stood alone in terror at the threshold between paradise and earth. There I heard a mysterious echo, my own voice, singing to me from across the forbidden side. I shook awake, at once alive in a blaze of green fire. Let it be known, I did not fall from grace. I leapt to freedom.
Wow. So I I literally have goosebumps, but also need it explained to me a little bit.
I love this idea of women in cannabis not falling from grace, but leaping to freedom amidst a
Mm,
blaze of green fire. It's just this feeling like when I first started working for in cannabis, I felt like it was something that I had to be ashamed of or that I had to keep secret.
mm,
And over the years, a big part of my own hypothesis and my work was that some of the biggest change that we could make in creating opportunity in the industry was about just coming out of the closet as people that work in cannabis, that use cannabis, that understand cannabis, and that it's something that isn't dark and in the shadows. And
yeah,
it's not a fall from grace, it's a leaping to freedom. And so I really carry that message forward, and that's why I love this poem so much.
absolutely. And like this day and age, we're so lucky to now be in a place where this is becoming more common and people very much wear it on their sleeves, consumers, right? And kind of the move away from other substances and adopting cannabis as their wellness routine, right? And I've seen many women jumping into the space from the outside and kind of like bringing in their networks with them. And one of them that stands out was one of our guests was Melissa Vonderhaar, coming out of the convenience store space and definitely a leader in that space, but very much wearing it on her sleeve. Like cannabis is the future. And so it is gaining momentum, and it is really powerful when women are doing it because of the roles that they hold in their communities and in their families. And I'm seeing it here in our own community, like the when they're open and excited about the products that we're working with and that kind of stuff. It brings me a lot of confidence. I used to be scared to talk about it. We talked about this a couple of years ago. It's like um, that feeling of being working in the space, and how you might be perceived by your kid's school when they inevitably find out. But now it's open conversation, and people are really excited and really curious about it. So, um, yeah, an amazing evolution that we're kind of on here.
Amazing. So cool. Let's jump into our next topic.
Yeah, what is it?
I want to, yeah, I want to talk about AI a little bit.
Mm,
AI is a very hot topic these days in everyone's life. But in particular, there's been a lot of news about what's been going on between the federal government and Anthropic, especially as we've been uh, starting this new war in the Middle East. And it also came up after the US captured Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela, that potentially Anthropic was used by the Department of Defense in some of the planning. And I listened to a great podcast episode of the Ezra Klein Show over the weekend. It's entitled "Why the Pentagon Wants to Destroy Anthropic." And in this podcast episode, which I encourage you guys all to listen to, there is a technology expert, Dean Ball, who talks about that America is predicated on imperfect laws and imperfect enforcement, meaning that there are just a lot of wild laws on the books.
hmm
But because enforcement is so challenging and imperfect, it doesn't quite matter. But what they talked about in this piece of content is that due to the technological advances of AI, we're at the precipice of where data and AI could create perfect enforcement, as
hmm
opposed to this imperfect enforcement that we live in now. So think about just surgical and exacting enforcement of every law or regulation.
Sure.
And that immediately made my head think about cannabis, because we just constantly are at the intersection of policy and regulation and business opportunity.
And a
So
lot
I
of
wanted to bring
imperfection.
that up with
Yeah.
you, Ben, and start getting your thoughts about this. What is there to lose and to win around where we could be moving in cannabis,
Hmm.
with the difference between imperfect enforcement and perfect enforcement?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like we were inferring this. I don't know if it was last episode or a couple episodes ago, just about the ability to leverage technology and the fact that we have seed to sale compliance, um, to have more exacting, regulation of the industry. Uh, how you feel about it probably sits on where you lie on kind of the black and white scale of compliant operations. But certainly being leverage, you know, AI to kind of consistently scan, the activities of these tracked companies, like it would pretty much overnight get rid of the concept of like burner distribution and kind of activities that are diverting cannabis away from regulated markets. Uh, how that would get enforced and the litigation that would have to ensue afterwards. I mean, it would cause a flood of court cases, or maybe just a lot of quick settlements, and slaps on the wrist. I don't know how that would result, but I think the industry is ripe for it, right? Like I was just talking about the ability to identify a process and create kind of an agent to kind of do those processes, and like why couldn't our regulators do that and actually kind of stand up to what they're supposed to. I know that, like we were discussing just a couple of weeks ago, like the DCC losing their lawsuit for not upholding the laws that they were tasked with governing, and um, I mean that's a prime example. I do think if they adopt the technology, that they very quickly could become compliant.
Well, and so to dive into really what you're talking about is this idea that within our track and trace system, all the data is there. We're just not pulling the insights from it in
hmm
a useful way. And this concept of what the future, the next chapter of AI looks like is AI agents that are taking actions. They're not just waiting for a human to say, can you connect these two concepts, or can you scrape this data and find things, but that we could really create agentic regulators that
Yeah.
were every morning scraping the track and trace data flagging things that look strange and creating actions on the back of whatever those insights are. And while I see that there clearly is a lot of benefit to kind of the progression of the market, there's also so much static within that because it isn't
Hmm.
all about just flagging transactions that might be diversion. There's also laws out there that some might consider extreme. Like in Michigan, just yesterday, the CRA, the Cannabis Regulatory Agency, reminded all cannabis licensed retailers in the state that they're not legally allowed to call themselves dispensaries, and that that term in Michigan is reserved by law for pharmacies, and that they are only allowed to call themselves cannabis provisioning centers. And it's like,
Wait. So,
yeah,
do pharmacies don't currently dispense cannabis, right? But they're in
they're
advance trying to reserve that title for them.
not for cannabis dispensaries, just the term. If someone says, I am called the Leaf and I'm a dispensary, that is not allowed. A cannabis dispensary that we would call it in any other place is not allowed to call itself that. It is by law required to call itself a cannabis provisioning center. And this is an example of kind of the static that could be created if we live in an AI agentic regulatory world where these agents could be out there and they could be scraping social media, scraping reviews, scraping websites, and anytime a licensed cannabis retailer accidentally called themselves a dispensary, there could then be a whole range of enforcement actions that come on the back of that. And I think that
Hmm.
part of compliance strategy and the way that businesses navigate complex rules is weighing the penalty on the other side of, well, how likely is it going to be that this law of that I'm not allowed to call myself a dispensary is going to be enforced, and if it is enforced, how comfortable do I feel with that penalty?
Hmm.
and and there's just a constant reckoning of, is this going to actually be enforced, and does it really matter? But in a world where everything is enforced and everything really matters, I just worry that we're going to lose the through line of what really actually matters.
Or maybe it just forces better regulation, or better laws, and we can predict that, the same tools that are used to enforce them can also be used to help make them, and kind of do these iterative processes of understanding, like, what are the implications of you know implementing some of these laws. um, I think about supply chain a lot, obviously, and think about quality, and what I could see it preventing in the future is, like, a lot of these retroactive recalls that we see in California. I feel like every other day I'm getting a DCC email being like, "Oh, voluntary recall or involuntary recall," and it's like, these are things that should have been caught during the production process. And so,
Oh, yeah.
being able to have an AI agent review every COA that comes from a lab, and tying that to a product, like, you can catch those things early on. You can catch, you know, like, small pesticide hits in, like, single batches, like, that we know the DCC doesn't have the firepower to put people on, but you can certainly put an agent on that level of stuff. Or things like label reviews. We always talk about how no agency is going to be able to sit there and review every single label for every new SKU that's coming out, but an agent sure as hell could, or could at least flag something as potentially being, attractive to children, and then that is the one thing that gets in front of a person, and then there's a final judgment call, right? So there's a lot of opportunity where it could help remove a lot of the pain and frustration about the quality of the products, or the types of products that are hitting the market.
I totally agree. And the reason this is such an interesting issue is because it's so multidimensional. There are
Mm,
so many incredible benefits to utilizing this type of innovation. And I also see just so many changes to the way that we operate as humans, the way that our businesses work, and even to the way that our civilization um, is underpinned in terms of what are the
hmm.
virtues and morals of the way that we see ourselves living within the construct. And the United States was founded with by people that were very skeptical of government in
Yeah.
general, and government overreach into people's lives. Uh, and we are looking at an opportunity where it would be very, very easy for the government to use technology to get very, very deep into our lives. It could be that we're no longer able to roll through a stop sign with a nice California stop
Damn
because
it.
the law says you're supposed to make a complete stop at every stop sign.
Mhm.
And
Better give me a
now
self-driving car then,
technology,
because
yeah,
that's just
it's like the cars could be alerting the government every time you don't make a complete stop. And that's not the world that most of us want to live in. Uh, and yet, the laws of our country have not caught up to regulate kind of what is the boundaries, where are the barriers of how far the implementation of AI is allowed to reach
Mhm.
into our lives and into enforcement. So I think that this is something that is worth thinking about because the train has left the station, and the changes that are coming are going to happen fast.
Right.
We don't exactly know what they're going to look like yet. I spoke to a friend who is very high up at a tech company this weekend, and she says that internally the way that they talk about it is that the economy in the world are going to be completely rebuilt in the next 3 years, and that's going to come real fast.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
I believe it. All I just can't get over this whole, like, rolling stop thing just because it's just like we're
yeah,
taught to drive like that. Um, if they implement that, then they should implement the agent that goes through all the Epstein files and identifies all the guilty. That's all I'm gonna say.
done.
Done.
Boom.
uh, anyways, yeah, I don't know. I do think the economy is completely getting rebuilt. I follow a lot of what's happening in the AI sphere, and it's very clear that a lot of the jobs that are high paying today are ones that are ripe for disruption. And conversely, some of the, I guess, lesser attractive white blue collar jobs are ones that will remain and are attracting people. I have some friends that maybe coming out of, you know, the the kind of services based realm that are thinking about launching, very physical companies, like of like whether it's gardening companies or house painting or sprinkler companies. One of those actually popped up when we were at Cannabev Summit. um, it's just slightly unsettling, but also like kind of a fun like exercise to think about, like, what does my role in the economy look like in 5 years, right? Um,
Yeah. And I know you've taken a very open-minded and adoptive approach as you've been thinking about it in your business, Ben. And I think that's really incredible. It's so important for businesses to keep up because otherwise you will be left behind. But
yeah.
inevitably our world is changing. So as we keep evolving kind of the inner workings of how we make an SOP or how we systematize processes to unlock the ability of humans to use our critical thinking pathways, we're on a wild roller coaster. I'm here for it. But
Yeah, I mean,
I
we have to stay on top of it, especially as business leaders, right? Because what will happen is, as you hire certain people into your company, there's going to be this forcing mechanism, because you're going to compare one person next to the other, and if the productivity of one is far outshining, one of your longer tenured employees, like, it's going to cause extreme tension. And so, we aren't forcing it upon people in the company, but what we are doing is, building it where we can in the in between to facilitate just kind of the fluidity of operations, but also creating the opportunity to level up our existing employee base and inspire them about what they could do, how they can make their jobs uh, easier or simpler or more focused on the things that they are absolutely necessary for. And what I anticipate happening in the not too distant future is that many of the much of the employee base will they're going to become builders of systems more so than executors of tasks. And I think that's the most important way for any employee in a company to start thinking about their role. Like, how can I build myself out of this, and what can I focus on next?
Mic drop there. Well, let's talk about Tilray. What do you got for us? You
Ooh,
put together a whole bunch of
Tilray.
cool info. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tilray just acquired BrewDog, which is a fairly well-known craft cannabis darling at one point. I think their valuation was in like around the 2 billion mark at one point, but then they have since receded pretty significantly. So a $44 million acquisition, and I think when we start to think about the activities of Tilray and the various acquisitions that they've made over the years, is are they still a cannabis company? And I think that's a big question. And as a private, Vertosa, we're a private company, and we've raised venture capital, and our value is pegged against the cannabis industry. But Tilray's a public company, and they're, I think, currently trading at about 900 million dollar market cap, and they have somewhere in like the 850-ish million revenue range. So it's like a 1.1x revenue multiple that they're getting on their stock. So not very huge in the forward looking range. It's a very sobering valuation, right? And so the big question is, they have a lot of revenue now coming in, and we can break this down. They have a lot of revenue coming in from craft beer. They have a very significant chunk coming from cannabis still, and then there's their EU operations. They one of their early acquisitions was Manitoba Harvest, which is a big hemp foods, so not hemp cannabinoid, but hemp foods company. And so it's just a very interesting diversification play. And um, yeah, it's. I haven't counted out Tilray, although I have counted out many of the former, Canadian publicly traded companies.
I'm so glad you wanted to talk about Tilray because I had counted them out. I had watched their stock over the past 5 years decrease over, we looked it up this morning,
Mm-hmm.
97%.
Ooh.
At its height, it almost hit in the last 5 years, it was close to 300, and now it trades around $7, give or take. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's lost so much market cap that I think people just look away
Right.
of what the heck is going on, and you hear people kind of talk some shit about the CEO and his compensation, but there's actually a lot of business happening inside of this company. Let's dive in.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, to kick it off and just put some brackets around it, there's four major segments here. So we have cannabis, which is largely Canadian, some international medical, that and a very small amount of U.S. hemp THC, I guess, kind of goes into this category. So that's just under 250 million, which is about 30% of the revenue. Then they have the Bev Alc segment, which I mentioned contains a whole host of kind of fallen from grace brands. You have like Shock Top and Sweetwater Brewing, Montauk Brewing, Alpine Beer, Green Flash, and probably about eight others.
And they've
Um,
been acquiring these from existing very large Bev companies that are
yeah. I
over
think they
these
got a
brands.
package of five, like from AB InBev at one point for killer price. Again, BrewDog was huge at one point, and they got it on a fire sale. So the Bev Alc portion is 240 million, so 29%, right, almost dead even with cannabis. And so I think based on where things are trending and how they're leaning into the business, beer might be more than cannabis next year. We'll see. The distribution, pharma distribution in Europe, which was kind of like an under the radar thing, I don't know much about, is 300 million dollars of the business. So that's 36%. And then lastly, like I mentioned before, the wellness side, the hemp foods, is about 33 million, so about 4%. So still significant, but not nearly as much as these other three major pillars of their business. Um, I think revenue is one thing, and we can talk about like it going up and down, but the other notable like through line of all this is just the amount of money that they've been losing year over year. And that is probably why the stock price is as modest as it is today. Anna Ray, I know you like to talk about losses and losses in these publicly traded companies. What's your kind of read on it? Like, are you investing in Tilray now after counting them out?
I am careful to not invest in cannabis companies after making really bad choices in public cannabis stocks over the years.
Mm,
I'm just terrible at it. I I know too much, so don't know if I'm going to be rushing to invest in Tilray. But I will say that you've really got me thinking about them being much more complex than meets the eye, and that they are more than a cannabis company. And really,
hmm
what are they at this point? And it makes me think about how PepsiCo scaled and started acquiring companies, and at one point they owned Frito-Lay. And at that point, are they still a beverage company if they also are selling chips and other things? And I think that this is what Tilray is showing us, is like they're really becoming more of a global CPG company that
mm,
is engaged in cannabis as one segment or channel of their business. And that's what's exciting to me, is that I think that there's an opportunity for many global CPG companies to look at having cannabis exposure. And Tilray maybe started with cannabis and became more diversified as time went on, but I think that we'll see the opposite, as there hopefully becomes more policy and regulatory certainty at the federal level in the United States. But even without that, there are plenty of other countries that do have federal national laws on the books for cannabis, and that global CPG companies will just target investing in those countries. And case in point is Europe and Canada. And there's just a lot of action in other places around the world. So there's certainly opportunities. It's just the US is going to be off the table for those companies until we fix some of our mess.
hmm, hmm. Yeah, actually, I think I wrote about this a couple years ago when Tilray acquired Hexo up in Canada, and there was the Molson Coors like connection and all that kind of stuff. Um, Being in the beverage category, I can't help think about the long game here, and maybe this is a very fine needle to thread, but if and when THC beverages become kind of a mainstay on supermarket shelves, liquor stores, is this their opportunity to become the AB InBev of the THC beverage category? Do they flip all these brands and leverage all these distribution networks to then like pump a whole portfolio into these established relationships that they have? Um, I mean, I think that's where my head normally goes, and like if I'm thinking about is it investable or not, like that's what would have to happen for it to be investable because they've made all these asset purchases. And I mean, I don't think craft beer is going to return to its glory days. It'll always have a place, but it's largely going to plateau. So that's their big growth opportunity on top of the platform that they created. As I think about the other assets that they have, I don't know if I see like I don't see all these acquisitions feeding into them. Like they have this pharmaceutical like kind of distribution arm. They have the international cannabis. Like that's not the big bet. Those might save the business in a downside event, but I think the big bet here is THC beverage being able to leverage the rails that they've built.
It makes all the sense because they've got these well-defined brands, like this idea of a BrewDog THC IPA. Sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been actually waiting for the THC beer to make its entrance. There hasn't been a great one. Um, yeah, that's the coming together of the strategic growth, of getting to learn from and utilize the rails that these alcohol companies, or mostly beer companies that they now own, have, and then to combine that with what they've learned in THC. I wonder how long this regulatory hedge takes for them to truly kind of see it materialize in the market. and
Mm,
they have been having such intense losses for so long. I don't know how long that can continue to go on, with there's just not an endless amount of capital. And
yeah.
so I'd be curious, and if Irwin Simon would like to join us and tell us what the big plan is on how the company gets out of this endless cycle of losses to take all of these really interesting assets into something that can turn into a real kind of durable company that makes sense. We are very open to it. But
Yeah.
I think that the optionality into THC is really smart, and they've done it backwards. Like we've seen Constellation make big investments into cannabis first starting from their knowledge in the alcohol space. And in some ways it feels like Tilray took this seed of starting as a cannabis company and is trying to become a global beer and pharmaceutical company instead, and then get to take that scale and bring THC into it. So
Hmm.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch, especially this year. There's a lot going on if
Mhm.
you haven't heard.
You want to talk about that?
Well,
Maybe not today.
not, I mean, yes and no. It's like I think someone reposted one of our recent clips and, you know, pointed out that um, it's defeating to the hemp industry to create beverage carve outs. Um, and I think it's an interesting position. Like, I don't disagree. I think that having a beverage only carve out for hemp is very challenging. I think it does eliminate a lot of businesses. But here's my counterpoint is that November 12th or 11th or whatever it is coming, right? It's there's no guarantee that we get past that and have any semblance of a hemp industry. Right now, hemp industry would be any hemp plant or derivative, as people like to often point to, that is 0.4% THC or zero point 0.4 milligrams per container, 0.3% THC uh, or less, right? And that just doesn't create much of an economy at all beyond CBD and even questionable how many hemp plants you can grow that actually meet that definition and then have the extract um, process not fall into a legal gray zone. There are conversations now happening where we know like Howard Kessler and his group are having progress alongside One Hemp and therapeutic CBD, and that there was the EO that said we want to create space for these therapeutic products. All fine and dandy, but that in of itself is a carve out, and so I don't see beverage as our vision of a future sustainable hemp marketplace. Beverage is like a concession of like the opposition of like, okay, like this is not as threatening as all that other stuff that is currently on the marketplace that is slated to be banned in November. And I think this is going to be the big discussion heading throughout the rest of the year from the hemp side uh, from the hemp side of the industry is there's what people want. Um, there is what we think we can get, and then there is what we can get. And those are going to be the things that are argued into the wee hours of the morning every night, probably. Um, but I want to be very clear. Like even the alcohol industry, they are conceding to what they are hearing. Nobody wants like super low caps on single serve beverages. Like everyone wants more than that. And where I think people are missing the boat is we're arguing about what we're conceding, but we're starting from zero. Like the ban has already passed. And if you aren't listening to what Congress has to say, and you aren't listening to what the regulating agencies that are in the White House every day, like, sure, you can get a meeting with the White House, you can have lunch, you can pay $50,000 to talk to congressmen, you can play the game, but at the end of the day, you have to be listening. And I think this is, frankly, the alcohol industry, who everyone likes to, make the enemy when it comes to these restrictive kind of potential language. They're spending a lot of money to listen. The ones that are spending money to make it more restrictive are not out in the open. And I think that's another important dynamic to know, is like there's a lot of conversations that aren't happening in the different organizations and different groups that are representing hemp. There are many conversations happening on the Hill that nobody knows about, but you can start to hear them if you listen closely enough. So I'll get off my soapbox. That's my monologue. No one thinks that a beverage only, highly restrictive marketplace is a sustainable hemp marketplace. That's not what is being argued.
I will leave the opining on the policy path to you, but I will comment that I think that accepting reality and leaving denial aside is one of the most important things that we all need to do every single day as we face change and conflict uh, in business and in life. And what you just said to me and what you just said to everyone sounds like exactly that, of trying to accept the reality that we're faced with and not be in denial about what November 11th represents, and to think rationally with a healthy dose of acceptance for a very complex web that is Congress. So.
Yeah. More simply put, and we know this after advocating for it for over a decade. Well, intoxicating hemp is cannabis. Congress hates cannabis. Period.
Oh,
That's
my
why
goodness.
we're here. That's why we get teased with Schedule 3 and then nothing happens. Hopefully something happens. I'm still optimistic. But, we're still here.
Totally. We are still here. And what are we up to next week? I will be in Ventura at Hall of Flowers.
Ooh.
Yeah, should be good. Beachfront. I'll have the camper van. It'll be great. And you are also traveling next week, right?
Am I?
Or is it
Oh,
the
yeah,
week
it'd be
after?
fun.
You're doing the convenience event.
Yeah, a week after. So the 23rd through the 25th, find me in Chicago. I'll be at CSP's Cannabis Forum, talking about the future of cannabis and hopefully convenience stores together.
Yeah, awesome. And lots more events coming up, lots of fun episodes in the hopper, and just grateful to still be here. So thanks to everybody. It's fun when we get to do these episodes where we don't have a guest and we try to think about something you guys might like to hear from us. So thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, and more than anything, just having some one-on-one time. It's always nice.
I know.
We can pretend that no one's listening to this. Well, it's pretty easy to pretend. But let us know what you think, folks. Tell us, are these one-on-ones worth your time? Do you like the Cannabis Business News Roundup? This one was a little different. We did a deep dive on Tilray, but I thought that was a pretty interesting tidbit of news. Thank you to our teams at Vertosa and Wolf Meyer, and of course, our producer, Eric Rossetti. If you enjoyed this episode, please drop us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And yeah, until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep your spirits high. That's the show.